Welcome to the Cool Tools Show. I'm Mark Frauenfelder, Editor-in-Chief of Cool Tools, a website of tool recommendations written by our readers. You can find us at cool-tools.org. I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Kelly, founder of Cool Tools. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, it's great to be here.
In each episode of the Cool Tools Show, Kevin and I talk to a guest about some of his or her favorite uncommon and uncommonly good tools they think others should know about. Our guest this week is Gareth Branwyn. Gareth has been writing about DIY technology, media, and culture for over 3 decades. He's the former senior editor of Boing Boing, a founding contributing editor to Wired, and the former editorial director of Make Magazine. He's the author of 10 books, including his most recent, Tips and Tales from the Workshop. He currently regularly writes for Hackspace, Boing Boing, and Better Humans. He's currently writing a book about his lifelong obsession with William Blake. Hey, Gareth, how are you?
I'm good. Good to be with you guys. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. It's so wonderful to have you back.
Yeah, no, I think this is my 3rd time.
It is.
Yeah.
We keep on coming back to the well. Yeah. The well never runs dry with Gareth.
Exactly.
There's always like some great tools. And so, your first tool is something that I've never seen before, but it's called the Mr. Hobby G tool. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's something I had never seen before either. One of the game crafter channels that I follow had a little demo of it on Instagram. You know, I think I've mentioned before that I do a lot of tabletop gaming modeling, modeling for fantasy and tabletop war games. And so I do a lot of cutting miniatures off of sprues, hobby parts, model parts off of sprues. And you get the little nubs are left over, when you cut them off the sprues, and you have to sand it or file it or whatever. And sometimes these pieces can get quite complicated with lots of little tie-in points, and it can just take forever. I hate it. It's one of my least favorite parts of hobby modeling. So I saw this guy demoing this little tool. It's basically like a rotary toothbrush, and it's got these little sanding pads on the ends. It's a little expensive. I think it was like $27 on Amazon, and I'm always hesitant to get these, sort of expensive in terms of how frequently I would actually use it. But I love it. God, it's so like I just went through a whole faction of miniatures for this game called Afromunda, and there was a lot of parts to it. Each little model had like 10 or 12 parts. They're 28 millimeters, so they're tiny. And I just blew through this sanding. And then the other thing that I did is, which I've never done before, is I have a pretty decent pair of side cutters for cutting the sprue cutters. But I've never, I don't even barely ever sharpen my scissors, let alone sharpen like a cutter. But I took the time to file my cutter, and man, it's like between that and then this new G tool, it's just so easy to remove all of the the panel lines and the little sprue nubs from models.
That's cool.
I remember recently there was somewhere in the YouTube universe ravings about this sprue cutter from Japan. The
God hand, the God tool.
Right,
yeah.
The God
yeah.
I think there's half branding, right? I mean, this is just the name of it, the God hand.
And it's $50 or $60.
Yeah.
It's actually on my Christmas list to my parents. I always put things on my Christmas list that I would never afford myself. And it's like, well, if they want to spring for it. Yeah. So, yeah, I've heard it's great. It's probably not a lot better than the Xuron, I think is how you say the brand that I have, which is a medium range tool. And I have cheaper ones that I also use for more sort of brutal cutting, but for things like where I need it to be as sharp as possible, I use the Xuron cutter. But yeah, and when Donald Bell was in Japan, he actually went and saw it in the store, the God hand.
Yeah, I did too. I went to a toy store in Japan this spring which, by the way, is an experience because it wasn't. I mean, I hadn't been in a store that big. They had.
Was it Kittyland?
I'm not sure. It was in Osaka, and
okay.
it. I mean, they had an entire floor of just the models, and I've never been. And they had racks and racks of sprue cutters, and among them was this one. But even in Japan, it wasn't cheap, and it seemed like, well, I don't cut that many sprues right now.
Yeah, and when I saw Donald posted an image of it on Instagram, I immediately messaged him and go like, how much is it? Thinking that maybe it would be cheaper and I could have him get me one. But yeah, it was the same prices in the US. So
yeah. So anyway, so this one is auxiliary to your sprue cutters, and you use it to just quickly polish off, make smooth any of those little nubs. Is that the idea?
yeah, and then the mold lines, the panel lines from plastic
it does
models.
that too. Okay, all right.
Oh yeah, no, and that's also something that I really hate doing. And that you can get these special panel scraping tools too, which it seems so silly to get a tool that just does that one function. So it's great that this thing will do both of them. And yeah, it just makes it sort of pleasant. Something that I usually find kind of odious. So I'm pretty thrilled about it. Actually.
And it seems to be battery powered.
It's battery powered, yep, and it comes with 3 different sheets of the discs, 600 grit, 800 grit, and 1,000 grit, I think. And it'd be so easy to make with just a hole punch, whatever kind of grit paper you want, and then foam tape. You could easily make your own. So I think you could, use any grit that you wanted to. And and obviously this is something that you could apply to any sort of small making where you need to do something on a very.
And wouldn't a Dremel sort of do something similar?
I've used a Dremel for some similar sorts of things. I mean, a Dremel is so aggressive, but yeah, maybe if you had a small light grit sanding paper on one of those discs. But the thing about this too is it's easy to get into places that I don't think a Dremel.
I see. Okay.
Would get into,
because it's looks like an electric toothbrush. It has a kind of a fat handle and it has a long neck. Which just
I think it actually is. I think it's basically probably the same hardware as one of those rotary toothbrushes. They actually say on the package, "Not a toothbrush."
That's funny. It reminds me of like the dentist polishing thing. It looks like that.
Yeah, I think that's basically what it is. I mean, they actually call it. On the package, the only English word on the package is polisher.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Really cool. So Gareth, your next one is a set of digital calipers.
Yeah, God, I am so in love with these things. I did a piece for Hackspace. I've been doing these 2-page monthly tutorials on some aspects, sort of like the skill builders we used to do at Make. And I did one on using digital calipers. And so I finally I did the research to find out, which kind I wanted. And I thought, do I really want to spring for the, how do you say it? Mititoyo? I don't know. Yeah, something like that. But, those are over $100. And so I found the iGaging, silly name, but iGaging Absolute Origins Calipers, and they're $40 on Amazon. And I've had for years, I've used a set that I think I paid like $9 for at Harbor Freight. I think they're called Tack Life, which I love. A cheapo tool called Tack is the brand name. But
I think that's the one I have, actually.
Yeah, they're fine. You learn the eccentricities of them. And I don't do precision engineering and things where I really need. I mean, I'm dyslexic, so I hate actually having to measure manually. So just having something tell me what measurement is what I'm looking for. And it's close enough for most of what I want to what I'm working in. But I did spring for these, and God, they're so beautiful, and they're so, they're super accurate. They have all the kind of features of the high-end models. They even have a data port out, which I was really excited about, not necessarily for myself, but you can actually plug these into a CAD program and just feed the numbers for things that you're measuring. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Although I heard that several videos that I saw on YouTube, they mentioned that as a feature. They didn't mention how much the data cable is. It's a special proprietary data cable. It's over $100. So with this and then the data cable, but then if you were doing the Mitutoyo ones, you'd also be you'd have to spring for the same kind of, it'd be an additional $100 there. So you're still saving, $100 and basically having the same full features of the Mitutoyo with its data cable. So
I see. And besides the reading out the data, what other kinds of things does it do that maybe your $9 one doesn't do?
It has, I think it has, let me see, I think it has fractions. It's, it does, obviously, metric and imperial, measurements. And then it's got a data hold. It's got a set screw. I can't remember if my cheap one has a set screw.
What does the set screw do?
Just to hold your place,
Oh, I see. Once you're there,
you got a manual hold, and then you've got the data hold in the software that holds the measurement, and it keeps that measurement. So the next time you turn it on, it has the previous measurement, which I don't think the TAC Life does that. It's got the zeroing out capability. So, you press the oh God, now I forget the name of what they call the ends of a caliper. The faces?
The jaws?
Yeah, but they don't call them jaws. I think they're called faces. But anyway, you press those together and you zero it out. It doesn't really have any, it actually doesn't really have that many features that my TAC Life has, except for the data out, and just it's a much more high precision instrument. It's got a couple of extra little features like the manual and the digital hold.
Okay. All right. So what's your next tool, Gareth?
The next one is, and this sort of gets into the thing I was saying earlier about I never sharpen anything. I'm also bad about replacing my X-Acto knife blades when I'm working, and so I end up, you really, really should replace those blades, or sand a new new edge on them or whatever, a lot more than most of us do. And so I get to the point where I'm just working with an extraordinarily dull blade before I break down and change it. And so my friend Andy Berkey recommended disposable scalpels. And I've never bought those before. I bought a box of those, and I just love the fact that if I need to, I need something that's very, very sharp, I can reach for that. And
what's disposable? Is it the entire handle and the blade is disposable?
Yeah, you can get ones that do just have a disposable the disposable blades, and you use the same handle. The ones that I got, it's the first box I've ever gotten. They're the number 11 size. And they're not interchangeable, the blades, but you can just you can pretty easily snap off the blade if you want to. Yeah, because the waste of it is bothersome to me. I wouldn't use them on a regular basis. I mainly use X-Acto knives, but you can snap off the blade and put that where you normally put your disposable X-Acto knife blades, and then recycle the handle. I mean, I've had the box now for a month or two, and I think I've used one blade, so I'm not going to use them very frequently. But it's just a nice thing to have if you need something that's like sort of sinfully sharp.
And are they sharper than a brand new X-Acto blade?
They're a lot thinner. Yeah, they're a lot. The blade itself, the edge itself, is a lot thinner than an X-Acto knife blade, and the actual blade is a lot thinner. It's a very so it's really good for getting, like I've been using it again when I was talking the thing about the panel lines and things on models. You can't even get that G tool into things like under an armpit, let's say, on a miniature. So I've been using the scalpel blade to just go in there and scrape the panel lines, and an X-Acto knife blade for, depending on what the model is, an X-Acto knife blade would be hard to get in there as well. So I like the real thinness, long thinness of the blade. It's very pointy. I also use it now to pick up things. So if I'm picking up like pieces of plastic card to put onto a model, you can just stab it with the end of that. So it's a really good pickup tool as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I'm just curious, are these actually used in surgery? Are they actually used for scalpels? They're not really like just blades that are being sold to hobbyists. This is actually would be used like a scalpel blade. You could do surgery if you wanted to, right?
Oh yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, no, I bought them from a medical. I bought them on Amazon, but it was a medical supplier.
Cool,
okay, great.
That's a good one. And you said it's $10 for a pack of 10.
10. So they're about $1 a piece.
I think
That's
so.
really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay, so tell us about your next tool, carbon brushes.
Yeah, this is one I actually thought about you when I did a piece for Hackspace on how to get the most out of your rotary tool and multi-tool, like a Dremel. And you had mentioned about how frequently your rotary tools die. And so when I started doing research on rotary tools and all the different, interesting things I could put in the article, I didn't even know that I'd never noticed that there are two little screw bays on many rotary tools on the sides of the handle of the tool. And if you open those up, they're little carbon brushes with a little spring. Like if you ever bought a new rotary tool and it comes sometimes, like I bought the one that you recommended, Mark, that really cheap.
Oh yeah, right, that $13 one.
Yeah, and it came with this little thing on a spring, and I'm thinking like, what's this component? How do you chuck this? But it turns out, that's a replacement for one of the. There are two brushes on a motor on these motors and on motors, you just open up these little bays on the side. It takes seconds to replace them. And that's a majority of what happens when a rotary tool stops working or gets really sluggish. It's because of these brushes. So you just replace the worn out motor brushes and you're good to go.
And presumably you could find replacements for almost any motor that you can identify.
Yeah. And I looked at most of my rotary tools have the little access bays, but then some of them don't. And so I haven't actually taken the case off to see if you can do the repair yourself. If it's not, like when you buy a rotary tool, a Dremel tool, the little chuck wrench that comes with it has a screwdriver on the other end of it. And that little screwdriver is for opening up those little bays on the side to replace these motors. And I can't believe in all of the years of using a rotary tool, I'd never encountered this. It never even dawned on me that you can do anything to repair your sluggish or dead Dremel tool.
Yeah, neither did I. That's great. So it could be a big money saver.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Like now my parents, speaking of things I put on my Christmas list that I normally wouldn't get myself, is my parents bought me one of these. It's a jeweler's rotary tool. So the motor actually hangs up on a stand and then you have a flexi shaft, and which is just amazing for doing like really, again, this modeling work, doing this very, very precise work. It's operated by a foot switch. And that had the little bays on the side, but some of the other ones don't. So,
well, and of course these days, some of like the lithium drivers and jewels are touted as brushless.
Yes.
So they presumably don't have brushes.
Yeah. Yeah, which I have one of those, which is dead. But yeah, I had one that doesn't. I looked at that one. It's like, yeah, no, that's got no bays for brushes.
So Gareth, how do you know when it's time to replace the brush? Does the thing start working poorly, or does it just completely stop?
I think both. I think mainly what happens is you start to get, like really sluggish performance. It just seems like it's, even if it's got a recharged battery or if it's even a corded one, it just starts to run very slowly. And then I guess, I assume that if that kept up, if you kept using it, you get to the point where there just wasn't enough, material left on the, the carbon brush, component that it would just stop working altogether.
Well, that's good. I never even noticed that the Dremel rotary tools had these little motor brushes.
Yep. No, I hadn't either.
Yeah, well, it's a great find. So tell us a little bit about your current projects, Gareth. What are you? You mentioned in passing a couple things you're working on in your new book. But what's the last thing that you published?
Yeah, well, my book, Tips and Tales from the Workshop, which I published last year, which is still doing really well. I get really good feedback on that. And then that inspired me to do a weekly newsletter, which I've been doing for, I think I just did my 20th issue, which is on review.co, which I guess is the same place you guys do your newsletters through, which I love that, that software just so easy and fun for me to use that I think that software has pushed me to continue, wanting to do this and continuing to do this. But I put it out every week, usually Tuesday. Sometimes it slips into Wednesday. I do 5 to 8 tips a week. I've gotten really fabulous feedback on it. It really seems to resonate with at least a certain group of makers. I really try to make it into something that's almost like a performance. I really think about the balance of the tips and really try to make it something that's sort of a satisfying consumption to the subscribers, and I think that's working. I'm getting good feedback on that. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm doing this, these Hackspace pieces which for people that don't know, Hackspace is a UK magazine that's very similar to Make. Comes out monthly. There is a print subscription, but you can the PDFs are free to download. It's very similar to Make, lots of projects, and I do these 2-page tutorials in that.
It's a really great magazine, and it's published by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and it's taken over some of the space that Make magazine had when it was running.
Yeah, it's very project heavy, and then skill, teaching you different skills. And one thing similar to Make, they do everything from analog stuff. Like, I've done articles on working with Plasticard and CA glue and things, and then all the way up to things like hacking servo motors and stuff. So it's a pretty wide range of analog to digital stuff, and which is great because I would have thought that because it's Raspberry Pi, they'd really be pushing digital making, but they don't. They've got a pretty good balance.
I know that you've made reference a couple times to some YouTube channels, and I've picked up a couple of great tips from you. But what's a YouTube channel recently that you've fallen for?
Oh God! Well, I don't know. I don't think I mentioned on this show, but I love Hand Tool Rescue. I love all of the restoration shows. I just did a piece on Boing Boing, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, on some of the restoration channels that I've been watching. But I think there's something, especially in this sort of jumpy time that we're in these days, there's just something very comforting about bringing something back from the dead and going very methodically and taking it from just a rusted heap of junk to something that looks basically like it looked when it came off of the showroom. I just find that so satisfying, and many of them are there's no narration. It's all sort of and there's something almost like sleight of hand. There's almost for folks that are really good at this, there's something that's almost looks sort of like a stage magician, because it's just the close-ups of their hands as they're doing these things. And then as part of that, I've started watching toy videos.
I'm
toy
familiar with the restoration ones. I'm not familiar with the toys. I mean, like restoring toys or doing something else with toys?
Yeah, no, restoration videos, like taking beat up old Tonka toys and making them look like they just came out of the box.
Okay.
That's really cool. I
think they do like replating or things, almost nickel plating or whatever, electroplating.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was a hand tool rescue one where he restored an old Craftsman benchtop lathe, one of those lathes that I saw in magazines when I was a kid. And it was like, oh, God, I want that so bad. But yeah, when you see what he started with and what he ended up with, it looked basically like it just come out of the box.
It's really funny because,
cool.
People have been restoring all automobiles for forever. And that was sort of maybe passed on, in your neighborhood garage. But I'm guessing that the knowledge to how to do these old tools probably didn't exist or wasn't even communicable until YouTube came along.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yep.
One of the hacks that I have seen first on YouTube and used is to restore the color of plastic, particularly like white plastic. You use hair salon gel, beach.
Oh yeah,
gel.
I wrote about that in Hackspace, and I was actually one of the things I was going to put in my list of 4 tools was the videos of that. It's called Retro Bright, is what they call that formulation. Yep.
And that's a kind of a hack that's been passed on in the YouTube verse. And so people are using it for, restoring computer appliances, all kinds of stuff like that. And so that to me is another example of how this is sort of accelerated learning and cultural improvement. I'm a big fan of the 8-bit guy who does a lot of antique computer restoration, and he just did a video recently, which I can send you guys the link to put in the show notes. Of he tested a whole bunch of different formulations and try to figure out which formulation did the best job of this retro brighting. So pretty cool. Yeah. And that's happening all over the YouTube verse, where people are doing this and then passing on what they learn, and other people take it and improve it from there. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I just Bob Claggett just did a thing where he tried to make a little tabletop propane forge. And I'd seen, Kevin, you had talked on a Adam Savage podcast about, wanting to see people mistakes. Like, we don't always want to see like it's perfect, and you get this sense of I can't do it that well. It's good to learn from other people's mistakes. And he had taken a bunch of the videos that he had seen. He tried to make his own. He tried to make a few of his own improvements, and it didn't really work out. And so he just showed the whole thing. Like, this is what I did. This is what worked out. This is what I'm going to need to probably have to redo. And then he said, and really you want to go look at the other videos,
Yeah. I thought that was really brilliant. I thought the fact that, he showed the work anyway and how it didn't work and how it could be improved. And then, as you said, he referred to other people who had done it better. And it's like, okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
Gareth, one thing that we didn't mention was this article you wrote about writing tips that you did for Better Humans, and it was really popular.
Oh yeah, I put that in there, sort of a bonus tip, because it's something that is probably one of the things I've done recently that's gotten the most positive feedback of anything I've done in a long time. It's I did that little booklet years ago called Gareth's Tips on Sucks Less Writing, which was really popular and has actually got taught in some universities. And so I wanted to sort of do an updated version of that. So I did a piece called How to Be a Better Writer. And one of the things that it's amazing is, because it's a Medium based, Better Humans is based on the Medium platform where people can highlight the best parts of the article, and now the entire article is highlighted. So
that's
so I thought, like, man, that's got to be some kind of win for an article when the entire thing is liked eventually. But yeah, it's just tips of things that I picked up over the years about, better writing, better editing, if you're working professionally, how to work with publishers and things like that. So, but yeah, people really, really seem to like it. So
yeah, I found it really useful for sure.
So we'll have that in a link too in the show notes.
Cool.
Sounds good. Well, Gareth, this has been great catching up with you and learning about some of the tools you've been using, which are really great, especially if you're into making things that require a lot of detail or fine work.
Yeah, small scale work.
Yeah.
Well, it was great hanging out with you guys again. Always a pleasure.
Hey, everybody, it's your host, Mark, and I wanted to thank you for listening to the Cool Tools Show. And I also wanted to let you know that we've got a lot more going on at Cool Tools than just this podcast. We also have the Cool Tools website, which has a new tool review every day, and you can get there by going to cool-tools.org. We also have 4 different newsletters that you can subscribe to, and you can subscribe to those from the Cool Tools page. We have this podcast that you're listening to right now. We also have a YouTube channel where we review tools. Check that YouTube channel out by going to youtube.com/cooltools. And one of the things I'd like to ask you is, if you're really enjoying everything that we are producing, go to our Patreon page and support us there. You can sign up and give us as little as $1 a month, and that would mean a lot to us. The money that we get from Patreon goes towards a lot of things. We transcribe our podcast interviews so that you can read them online. We pay for editing of our podcasts and for our videos. We pay our contributors. We have video production costs. We have equipment costs. We have hosting costs. And the money you give us through Patreon also goes to support Cool Tools Lab. Anything you give is a huge help. And one of the things that we do is, if you are a contributor to Patreon, we'll give you a shout out on air. And so I have a few people here to thank this week. Mark Lyanaj, Micah Gates, Monty Zukowski, Patrick James McNally, Robert Cohen, Scott, Spence Lloyd, Steve Avery, Steve Golden, Steve Levine, Tom Hess, William Phillips, Aaron Nipper, Durab Patel, Glenn Mercer, Jay Walker, Jeff Bonner, Ryan Jarrell, Pat Daly, Patrick Kennedy, Troy Wallet, Mike Camerate, Nicole Harkin, Tim Youssef, Scott Reed. Thanks all of you for supporting Cool Tools. And if you would like to have a shout out, go over to the Patreon page and sign up. And thanks for listening to the Cool Tools podcast. We'll see you next week.